unless you learn. No. No words. No words. Describe. I should have said. The poem. So beautiful. So maybe the people need to see what I see. They need to see.
These are the spiritual as much as physical voyages of the co-federation solar, SZUNNRISZESZ planet Earth, restored to heaven on our and every earth as our spiritual, genealogical, local, global, universal voyager in shared her and his family community enterprise. Our new millennial year's mission to rediscover and re-understand, sustain, and explore our and all our, in fact, familiar new worlds of family community, of the tree of love, life, and light throughout the solar system and universe, to restore, renew, and sustain our and new life and new sustainable civilizations, past, present, retroactively, and now, rebalance, and future, always balancing, to lovingly, genealogically, and boldly become and be space-time travelers whenever and where we have any dimensional reality, all in part been before, if also never been before, in alternative space lines that are circles, which are of the universal EQ, IQ, and SQ continuum, balanced combinations of the ever-expanding circle which spirals and grows, budding and blooming in space-time. Love and live enlightened, ever young, long, and prosper all, both in each and every one. Engage your heart, mind, soul, and body, for we all, both in each, and each both in all, can, must, and marvelously and miraculously make it so.
In the thunderous blast, she emerges, her eyes on fire, the mighty priestess. She's risen from the nativity of Caldera. She is risen from the fires of the earth. She is risen. She's risen.
We are risen.
She's risen. She's risen.
We are risen.
We all are risen.
Blessed be, blessed be, blessed be. Om Mahalakshmi Mriya Maharupa Mahapurya Mahapadhanashini Mahamaya Mahasattva Mahashakti Maharati Mahabhuta Maheshwarya Mahavidya Mahavara Mahabuddhi Mahasiddhi Mahayogeshwareshwari Mahatantra Mahamantra Mahayantra Mahasana Mahayagakramaradhya Om Mahabhairava Pudita Maheshwara Mahakalpaka Mahatandava Sakshini Mahadavesha Manishi Mahatripura Sundari Chatushrashti Upachararya Chatushrashti Kalamayi चतुष्षष्टि कोटि योगिनी गुणसेविता Celestial event. No. Words. Words. Describe. I should have said. Oh. So beautiful. So beautiful. Other people need to see what I've seen. They need to see.
This day I call the heavens and the earths as witnesses intercessorily for and hopefully and prayerfully not against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose love and life with light, so that you and your children may live. For I give you good doctrine, forsake ye not your, our new millennial law.
Okay. Another contrition. Maybe player Timesz sunflower. So killer Peter Blackwood. This is Anna Marie singing Christmas. And I am Cherokee, Cheyenne, Alaska, and Alabama, Quebec. And I am also a French, English, and German. That means we are all related. We embrace the new millennial golden rule that is the law of all nations, of the sacred ground that is Mother Earth, and all the planets of all the universes.
As we prepare for our broadcasts, we invite you to go quickly to our website, 5050now.wordpress.com. Look at the new millennial golden rule, which is at the upper right corner of the menu. And you will be able to see a simple new law for every neighborhood on the earth, for every neighborhood on this earth, and on all planets. I am the expected new lawgiver for this millennium. However, my job has been complicated by my not knowing who I was for much of my life, because I was so deeply embedded in patriarchy and conventional in my thinking, and did not have enough information, particularly about our family genealogy, to understand why around the millennium I rose with such intensity to bring gender parity to the planet Earth. I would like you to read the New Millennial Golden Rule now, and also scroll down to the sermons and look at the We All Have a Dream to Make Reality Now, the state of the New Millennial Union, which is a state of a co-federation of Earth and planets, which will occur when we start paying attention to our social sciences as well as to our physical and biological sciences. And most importantly, start paying attention to women instead of just co-opting women and paying attention to mostly old men. And scroll down further and you'll see a section on the website called Among the Representatives, You, and You. It's in the section under grassroots, congresses, courts, and assemblies. And you will see the names of women and youth from my own genealogical family, which is a unique genealogical family and important for North Americans right now to assist in co-delivering the New Millennial Golden Rule, to avoid planetary extinction, and also to give us the best future in the universe, a combination of Stargate and Star Trek future. and many other women and their youth from every continent on this planet. They represent certainly your own family. You are related to these women and their children. Everyone on this earth is at most 50th cousina and 50th cousin from everyone else. As you look through that list, consider adding your names to it. You can call us. There is a telephone number on the website, and there's an email address. We want to add as many people as possible because we have some very simple tasks that could bring heavens to this and every earth without people having to die first, instead of the curses that we are facing because of patriarchal planeticide. So visit that, and we'll be right with you. See, I was on mute. Okay, I want to start this again. We were on an investigation to see if we might have some co-hostesses this evening. And right now, I'm going to wait and see. We're not sure, but they're likely to be one. We know this week there will be a co-host, co-hostess. And we would like to have our own genealogical family co-hostess and co-host with us on these broadcasts. And we will continue to ask that. Now, you've had time to go to the New Millennial Golden Rule at 5050now.wordpress.com. And you've also had time to look at the sermon under We All Have the listing, We All Have a Dream to Make Reality Now. And the listing under the grassroots congresses, courts, and assemblies, that is the listing of women and youth who are in a transitional, already existing government for which I act as intercessor. And frankly, our tasks are not that difficult. They're more secretarial than, what should I say, than issue redefining, because the issues are already well defined around this world. What people want. People want renewable energy. People want resilient, happy, and friendly communities wherever they are. People want an internet that is accessible to everyone and is not surveilled by a covert sociopathy or subject to any sort of hanky-panky behind the scenes. People want that, and people want, most of all, a good life for themselves and their children, their posterity. We have figured out how to have a good life from the 7th to the 11th generations, past, present, and future, because we are going to recreate the past by traveling through time with common sense, and by going back in time and considering how the lives of the people would have been different had they lived according to the New Millennial Golden Rule, which is at 5050now.wordpress.com. This is the ultimate common sense. This month and month and a half, 2 months, January and February, is when the famous pamphlet Common Sense received its 2 wide distributions to North Americans. One distribution took place around January 10th or 11th, and the other distribution took place on Valentine's Day in 1776. It called for a government with full participation of women, indigenous, no slavery, and no property requirements. Over 240 some years later, we have not practiced common sense at all. We have practiced common genderism. We have practiced common racism, common classism, and common stupidity. And so we have to decide if we're going to use common sense or common nonsense for our way of life. If we continue to use common nonsense, which is what we are now doing, if you watch TV and think it has any reality by testing at all, then you're going to wind up with environmental catastrophes all over the United States of America and social chaos. Alienation, people hiding in their homes, afraid to talk to their neighbors. When they do go out, they'll be subject to fear and possibly antagonism among people who should be friends. And this is becoming, it cannot become a successful police state. Police states don't succeed. So they fall apart. We should have ample understanding of that by now. We saw a bunch of them fall apart. We saw Adolf's police state fall apart, and we saw Joey's police state fall apart. And yeah, there's a lot of countries that are still operating like police states, and they're in constant turmoil, and their people are drunk or drug addicted or whatever. They're falling apart. You want to be like that? Moving in that direction now. And why is that? Because you are practicing patriarchy instead of parity. When you practice parity, you get paradisal planets. When you get patriarchy after a certain number of generations, you get planetocide. That's what you get. And this is the ultimate lesson from the cosmic Christ. I'm a time traveler. I've been around the universe a couple of times, and I'm afraid I didn't know it until sort of in my late 50s, early 60s. I really didn't know enough about my own genealogy to have a clear perception of who I had been incarnated as, and who and why that was, and how that worked, that even though I had passed away in one generation, that I came back in another generation. And who was it sending me back? Goddess God. Goddess God was sending me back. I originally was in Atlantis. I know I was there. I am reincarnating the chief goddess incarnation of Atlantis, the highest priestess, Astrea, the goddess of divine justice with mercy. And I'm also clearly reincarnating women as diverse as Rachel, the mother of Israel, and Rachel, the wife of Andrew Jackson, and Rachel Carson, and Rachel Foster Avery, and many others of that name that kept coming back, and I kept coming back. And in my final incarnation right now on this planet, my most important one, I am partially reincarnating the wife of the mother of television. Her name was Grace Love. Her name was literally Grace Love. And of course, the Grace has the R that's in RA syllable that's in my name, Ra, because that is a syllable in most cultures that means light, to give light, to share light, to radiate light, Ra. So I hope you're watching this broadcast, because as soon as you embrace the new millennial golden rule, you become co-savior Ra, co-secretary general, co-savior Ra. What does a co-secretary general, co-savior Ra do? Well, first of all, they have a thought process that tells them that their community, their family, is now completely linked to potentially every human being who is not only living right now, but many who lived in the past, by what we are reading about our past on the internet. And even more important, those who are here now and those in our future. And why are you so powerful as a co-secretary general, co-savior Ra? Why would I call you a cosmic Christ? Because you can link your family genealogy and your all your time travel incarnations to those of the greatest light giving in every family on earth. You can heed and read and heed the words of the greatest light giving families on earth and know that they are part of your family and that you are related to them. And you are co-Christ too. You know, we call this month, the people of India celebrated a day where most of them celebrate Mohandas Gandhi. Some of them, the smarter ones, also equally celebrate Kasturba Kapadia Gandhi, his wife. They were both repeatedly jailed. They both made enormous self-sacrifice and personal sacrifice in order to bring a non-colonial democracy into being in their land. They had their revolution in the 1940s. The United States Revolution started on the right foot with common sense by Mary Lambert, the family of Mary Lambert and Tom Lambert Payne. And notice, I used the names of the wives that were born with along with the names of the husbands who were born with, because eliminating the names of the wives does have a psychological tilt to it that over time tilts us to extreme imbalance in the way we understand our her in history. And Miriam of Lambert and Mary Lambert and Tom Lambert Payne had a tragedy in their life. She, in her relatively young years, died in childbirth, giving birth to their baby. Those of you who saw the movie Braveheart knows that the main character in that, William, I'm forgetting his actual name, but a very real man, was motivated to throw off the colonial English dominance by what had happened to his wife. Tom Lambert Payne was also motivated by what had happened to his wife. He knew that the women of his times generally were abused and very kind, nevertheless. He wrote on his work before Common Sense a letter called An Occasional Letter about the Female Sex. And it starts out with quoting a poet that says, "O woman, without you, ye men would be brutes." Now, you just have to watch some of our debates to know that men without enough women to balance them are brutes. And you just have to look around the world and see who's beating up on who, and who's dropping bombs on who, and who's throwing grenades at who, to know that, yes, without women as their equals in decision-making, certainly a number of men can become quite much like brutes. We know that the biggest death toll in Russia today is not a fight with Ukraine. It is the abuse of women. And in the United States even, our loss of women in a year from wife abuse is a higher number than our loss of men in Iraq or Afghanistan. Yet our news media doesn't talk about these things. I guess women are just not interesting to our patriarchal media. And the sad thing is so many women in the media go along with this, and they don't rebel, they don't organize their own television stations, which I have kind of created here, because they're so conventional in their thinking that all they think they need to do is get a good salary and they'll have what they need in life. Well, I am a direct descendant of Miriam of Magdala and Jesus of Nazareth and all their kin, including Miriam of Nazareth. And I can tell you that's not all you need in your life. You don't just need a salary and a bank account. And the Native American wisdom is very good about this. There's a wonderful quote that many Native Americans use. It says, when the last fish is poisoned, and when the last lake has dried up, and when the last mountain has been blown up by drilling, when will you realize you cannot eat money? Well, we are sliding down the slippery slope toward Hunger Games in the United States. In this part of the world, we have not been protecting Mother Nature because we don't protect our mothers or our women. Our women are gracefully floating themselves into the most inverted form of feminism that you could possibly imagine. It's more abortionism than feminism. This country has seen women wrap themselves around a codependent relationship with state legislatures and congresses and courts where they weren't represented in any number, and yet battle it out with these courts and congresses over abortion, and it has divided women. Why? Because it creates a dynamic where women are focused on themselves and their abortion decision while they are already in a lower status in the culture, and therefore unwanted pregnancies and rapes are more common. And so the problem feeds on itself, but they don't go to the root source. By focusing on abortion instead of representation, the women have created their own cul-de-sac. And it is a mistake to focus on abortion until women have equal representation and balance of love and work that other countries do have. I mean gender parity. I mean it yesterday. I mean, you recalculate the whole story of the United States, so-called states, and all so-called nations, her in history, according to the New Millennial Golden Rule, and what would have happened had the women been fully present in the decision-making. And I can tell you what would have happened. We wouldn't have had the wars of Europe, the religious wars, the Wars of Roses, all the terrible wars, the 100 Years' War. That never would have happened. We wouldn't have had the Dark Ages. We wouldn't have had the bubonic plague. We wouldn't have had World War I. We wouldn't have had the Spanish-American War. We wouldn't have had World War I. We wouldn't have had the Civil War. We wouldn't have had World War I. We wouldn't have had World War II. We wouldn't have had Vietnam. We wouldn't have had the war in Korea. We wouldn't have had any of our wars. Not a one of them. Because in governments where women are fully represented, the peacemaking process is already in place. And it's an ongoing part of life, and so things don't erupt into war. We wouldn't have had the Palestinians fighting the Israelis. We wouldn't have had the Shiites fighting the Sunnis. Wouldn't have had any of this. I guess people just can't let go of daddy, because they're sure willing to take a lot of trouble to take it on the nose left and right to keep daddy at the helm. I don't think it's worth it. But humanity is locked into this pattern and doesn't think about it. And in addition to all the wars, there's a higher toll in terms of the human genius that has been suppressed. Women who are creative and men who are creative tend to be more egalitarian because they have better balance of their right and left hemispheres, and they are more able to shift their foot from their yin and yang balance a little bit from one to the other and think in a more integrated way. When women and men are too deeply tracked according to women being submissive and men being the dominators, all of that genius gets lost. People are conventionally successful within the roles that they ascribe to themselves, the woman in the submissive enabling role, the man in the dominant role. But what gets left out is all the genius. And so therefore I say to you, had we had gender balance and not lost it at the fall of Atlantis for these many thousands of years, at least 5,000 of years, we already would have opened the stargates, and we already would have interstellar travel, and we would have peaceful relationships not only throughout the earth with every person next to their neighbor and every region next to its neighbors, but we would have had peaceful relatedness to every planet within our solar system that is navigable and terraformable. We would have had it already. It may be that the fate of Mars was similar to ours. It may have been that there was a thriving civilization on Mars, and then the women caved, and the men took over, and the little green men took over, and the planet was lost over time. It became extinct. The life on the planet became extinct. Maybe we are the related to that planet. We don't even know it. It happened so long ago. But what I do know is that the social science is clear. That environmentalism is better when women are fully present in government. That the social laws are more protective of people at all ages when women are fully equal in government. So read the New Millennial Golden Rule, and I mentioned that this website is a combination of common sense. You'll see the huge common currencies of consciousness currencies as you scroll down on the website for infinite wealth. Let me show you this one. I'll show you one in a moment that shows Mary Lambert and Tom Lambert Payne, and one that shows Kasturba and Mahatma Gandhi. Now, we need to actually, before I show you these, I should show you many currencies. I will show you some more tomorrow that show groups of women and women themselves individually, because our problem with women is that they already have really low self-esteem. It's just like what George Carlin said. Women are crazy. What he meant was they're so low in their self-esteem, they're self-defeating. And men are stupid. And that is the truth. I'm sorry, it remained the truth because our media became controlled by patriarchal hands, and that which would have raised up the thinking of humanity was prevented from their knowledge here in North America. So they got real dumb now, and so dumb that they may not be able to punch their way out of a paper bag. But it's because the media was censored, and women went along with it to get a salary and get a little leg up under the glass ceiling, and the politicians misled us. They knew it was censored. They didn't want to talk about it, because they couldn't get on if they did. The media people said, well, if you tell the truth, we don't let you on the program. You don't come to the debate. So it's all controlled, my friends. Turn off the television. Turn off the television if you want a future. Okay, here's a consciousness. Our family. Well, I'm not going to show that yet. I'll show that tomorrow or this week. We're going to work on getting our family to co-present that with you. Let's look at this consciousness currency of Lambert and Lambert Payne and Kapadia Gandhi families. Just take me a minute here. Okay. We put together right next to each other consciousness currencies of the one revolution here in North America. See, there it is. Mary Lambert and Tom Payne, the givers of common sense. And beneath them, the people who developed the method by which you successfully end tyranny instead of fooling yourselves about it. And that is the family of Kasturba Kapadia and Mohandas Gandhi. Satyagraha, truth force, that is, you refrain from doing what you don't think is right, and you are willing to, if need be, as they were repeatedly, and actually so was Tom Payne, be arrested and develop your movement along the lines of including a full participation of women, which is what the truth was of the independence movement in India. In North America, the women participated even more sadly as underlings. You know, I was reading that the January 1st date was the date that a woman we called Betsy Ross, but she has another name. It was Elizabeth Watson, I think, Elizabeth something, made the flag of the 13 colonies flag. So she was a seamstress, and we remember her. But you know what? The seamstress could not participate at the Constitutional Convention. She could make the clothes and the fabric, but she couldn't make the fabric of the Constitution. Doesn't that kind of seem a little hypocritical about we the people? January 1st. Wake up, New Year's babies. And that's why common sense was so important, because it would have given her full participation in the government. Same with Abigail Adams. It would have given her full participation in the government. But Abby, when John said, no, you can't come, she should have divorced him, but in those days the women didn't. And we see some of that going on with the women in our political realm. They should have divorced some of their husbands. Then they could have come back to them as full partners and had them later on. Instead, they coped with it and enabled it for the sake of the children or for the sake of the man's career, etc., etc. And as a result, the whole society fell down and became more and more violent, more and more degraded. Women have to know their own value. If they don't stand up for themselves politically, they'll wind up in the soup personally, and vice versa. It just doesn't work in the other way. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be a big conflict between the genders anymore. Most men want an egalitarian society for women. Most men of our times are evolved enough to know that that's desirable. There's only a subgroup that doesn't know, and they are highly touted on television. They're specifically chosen by the guys in the boardrooms of TV to be shown, whereas the nicer fellas who would like an egalitarian world are not shown. So, and more seriously, so many women who would like an egalitarian world are not shown. And all they show you is the bimbos who read the teleprompters, who do follow the rules of the boardrooms. That's television. Turn it off, please. Turn it off. Look at the 11 steps under the New Millennial Golden Rule and turn off TV. Don't watch political debates on TV. They're pre-selected candidates. They're puppets. You got it? All of your presidents have been puppets ever since they stopped following common sense in 1776. John Adams was a puppet. Tom Jefferson was a puppet, because they kept the Tom Paines out of there. There were other men like Tom Paine at that time, but they were kept out. Andrew Jackson sort of recognized that. He was trying to get rid of some of the property requirements and so forth, but it didn't occur to him to let the women in, because it didn't occur to his wife, Rachel. She was too embedded in patriarchy herself, even though she was a first lady. She didn't figure it out. And most of the first ladies, all the first ladies haven't figured it out. Michelle hasn't figured it out. I wrote to Michelle a whole bunch of times, and her staff was very enthusiastic about what I had to say, but I never heard from her, because her husband is supposed to be a puppet and she's supposed to go along with it. And for reasons that have to do with her own low self-esteem as a woman, and apparently her own mother's and hers lack of honesty with each other and with their daughters, they're letting these two daughters, Malia, who is the name, I was reading about Malia. Malia is not only an African goddess name, but it was also one of the major cities of Atlantis, where women had full equal participation in decision-making. Of ancient Atlantis, there was a city called Malia. But Malia right now lives in a country where women in general are profoundly underrepresented, particularly women of any minority status are very profoundly unrepresented, and have always been so. And yet everybody talks about the founding fathers and what a great bunch they were. We need to wake up, everybody. Pay attention to what's in the details. The devil is in the details. People can flag wave and thump their chests all they want to about upholding America, when behind the scenes, all they're holding up is their own bank account. So let's be honest. I am a paraclete. I don't mince words. I'm trying to save souls here. So we're going to stop the broadcast now. Look at 5050 down. We're 5050 now.wordpress.com, and we're coming back for another broadcast later.